It's episode number 8. I can't believe we're almost at double digits now, actually. It's been going longer than I thought we'd keep it going.
It is the magic one, apparently. If you get 10 podcasts out, that's it. You'll just keep going. Most podcasts die before they get to 10. So we're just going to keep going. Just keep swimming.
Right. So, yes. Welcome to Almost in Focus, the podcast that does not always stay sharp because there is nothing sharp about either of us. I'm Tom, a documentary photographer in the South, and I'm joined as always by
Toby, the northern half of the Dynamite duo.
And this week, we're going to sort of recap on something we spoke about last time and how that links back to a project we had to do when we were at university and what's a nice way of getting going, I suppose, for the new year photographically. So,
Yeah.
before we do that, though, what's new?
Bit of activity on the personal projects the last few days. I've been chasing nurses, which sounds a lot more fun than it is, actually. That sounded a bit more carry on nurse than it meant to. So,
Do you want to rephrase?
I mean, my wife does listen to this, so yeah, probably. Let's really think that. I've been communicating with nurses and medical professionals about my photography project, which obviously, if you've listened to previous episodes, is about documenting people living with IBD and stomas. I'm waiting for to hear back, but hopefully making some official inroads as well as my sort of more ad hoc social media chasing of people. Used my recently purchased toys of a DJI mic mini today to make another video. I had to justify the purchase of the mics, so it spurred me on to make some work. To clarify, the mics were bought before the new year, before my no more gear rule. So if anyone's keeping track, I still haven't bought any more gear yet, just saying. But yeah, so I'm making progress. I haven't taken photographs particularly, but I have been doing that admin side of things, building up contacts and building more access. But you have more to tell us about photography projects, I believe.
I do. I'm not going to say anything really yet because it's not confirmed, but
Ah, fair.
after we recorded the last episode, it got me thinking. It got me wanting to start looking for a new project for myself. And I think I found one which ties in with other things I've done in the past as well. So it's quite nice to have a bit of, I suppose, consistency while
Hmm.
still doing something new. So I've reached out to a local community,
Yeah.
and so far, the conversation's been very, very positive. They've been very open to my questions, and it looks like I'll be able to get that started in the next couple of weeks, which is really exciting. When you're starting a project, I suppose we both take this for granted because we've had to do this so much since we were at uni. Trying to get your foot in the door can be really, really daunting. And it took us a long time to realize that the worst thing that people can say when you're asking permission to photograph them, permission to enter their lives, is simply no. It's just that some people might say that more horribly than others. And luckily this time it's a maybe, and a very positive maybe. Definitely not a no at this point. So we'll see what goes on with that. My only other bit of news was kind of in place when we spoke before, which is the photography show at Birmingham's NEC in March. Last year when it was in London, I spoke at it, and so speaking again this year. So that's now confirmed. So I'm going to be there on the 14th, which is the Saturday, 14th of March. Hopefully we're both going to be there. That's the plan. Yeah. And there's going to be loads of stuff going on, which is really nice. So there's more info going on their website in the next couple of weeks, but they have given me a little bit of a rundown of what's happening in terms of analog photography and the analog section of the show. So they're calling that area All Things Analog. And it has the analog stage with the speakers. That's sponsored by AG Photographic in their photo lab. It's still people to be confirmed. There's still some gaps to be filled. But already there is Rachel Brewster Wright, who is one of the hosts on the Sunny 16 podcast. And she usually does loads of demos. So I know she's doing some stuff with cyanotypes and doing some demos and workshops this year. There's Mandy Izquierdo. And Mandy, if I've pronounced that wrong, I do apologize. She's from Only Films. She's going to be doing a talk. Christian from Vintage Camera Huts, Dave Shrimpton, Matt Perry from Ilford, me. There's more as well.
I mean, sounds like a good lineup, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I mean, that's over those 4 days. So
Yeah.
I know me and Rachel were both speaking on the Saturday. Rachel was doing something later in the weekend as well, I think. And what I didn't know, and it's quite exciting, is Brendan Barry's gonna be there again. So he was there last year, and he built a camera obscura out of cardboard boxes, and he was doing portraits of people visiting the show. And these were 16 by 20-inch darkroom prints being made in the giant cardboard box. And it was really exciting. It was great seeing all these people from, people experiencing analog techniques, people who are new to photography, people who only ever really worked digital, seeing his approach and his very carefree approach to darkroom printing. And yeah, he's doing a similar thing this year. I think he's expanding from the cardboard boxes to something a bit more robust. So we'll see what happens there. There's also going to be exhibitors. So Ilford, JFR Film are there, AG Photo Lab, Zone Imaging, who do some quite interesting chemistry, Capix, who do color printing machines and C41 machines. In the past, Vintage Visual, who we had on a couple of weeks ago, shared a stand with them. I don't know if they're
Okay.
doing that this year. I don't think they are. Kex Light
Mm.
Meters have been part of that in the past. So who else? Vintage Camera Huts.
No.
Orwo. Have you tried any Orwo films, Toby?
Yeah, I have actually. I really quite like them. I bought a roll sort of as a, "Oh, let's see what this is." But yeah, I quite enjoyed it, quite like the outcome of that. So yeah, might be worth seeing if I can get a few rolls of that while we're there. So if there's any trade show
Yeah, so
discounts.
I've not tried any of theirs, but
Mm,
last year the guy who runs Orwo
yeah.
bought Ferrania, which do the P30 and P33 films, and I did some samples of P33 for Analog Wonderland a year or so ago, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite films. So Orwo being there, now running Ferrania, I'm hoping that's going to be there as well, so I can stock up. Analog Wonderland, of course, going to be there. And last year they were running a full lab processing film during the show. I'm not sure what they're doing this year, but I know they've got a big stand again. Pentax going to be there, so the Pentax 17, which I've got one of, I love it,
Yeah.
and
I'm
Dragon Film.
These are the, Welsh guys, aren't they?
Yeah, so these are re-rolled or rebranded films, I believe, from possibly Berger, possibly Addox.
Berger, my
But they're
favourite
in little,
film.
yeah, but they're in little cool canisters with a dragon on, and I kind of want to get just some of those canisters.
Yeah.
And they're going to be sharing the stand with This Is How We Roll, who are just doing re-rolled Kodak ECN2 films and things like that. And they've been around for a little bit as well. I was having a chat with them the other day. As well as that, they'll also have a gallery of the Ilford Photo 2005 26 photographic competition. So some of my students entered this.
Mm.
Some, I don't know yet who's been selected or not, but it'll be quite nice to see maybe some of my students' work on display as part of that too.
Fingers
So
crossed. I tell
that's
you
just
what,
the analog bit. And then you've got all the
I was there, I mean, it's
lighting and you've
huge, yeah.
got the digital stuff. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, there's some big lens people there, which might be where all my money goes. I tell you what, going to this show will test my resolve, my no more gear this year rule. I can feel myself failing quite monumentally. I feel
Yeah,
like I'll leave
I'm
with
going to be
a big
pulled a little
bag.
bit by Fujifilm. You're probably going to get dragged in by Sony as well.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it, I can only carry so much back on the train. So if I go by train instead of by car, it will limit my spending,
You
possibly.
can also buy a Peli case there with wheels.
Yeah, good point. I don't need any more of them. I'm already
Uh,
running out of space with photography gear in this house. I'll tell you what, I need a bigger house. The podcast needs to take off big time. We need to become multimillionaires. And then I need a big house with space for cameras. I mean,
a stand that's always there, which is one of my favorites. And I remember the first year I went to the photography show, it was called Focus on Imaging back then.
yeah, I remember
And
that.
this stand was just a couple of cardboard boxes, really. And that's the Disabled Photography Association. And over the years, it has grown and grown and grown. And it's just sort of a diving pit of old lenses and maybe darkroom bits and pieces. I got some printing frames last year.
Yeah.
You've need an obscure tripod mounting plate they will probably have one there that you can pick up for a few quid. And it's really great to see how many people are sort of, hunting for kit that they can use and supporting a great charity at the same time. So that's gonna be one of my first places to hit up when we get there on that Saturday morning.
Yeah, well, that'd have been like I vaguely remember that now. That must have been like 2010 maybe? Focus on Imaging, was it then? Before it changed its name?
Possibly.
'Cause I know yeah, 2010, 2011-ish. But we used to have like a very James Bond looking logo. Very cool. And, sad act for a bit of graphics.
It's quite dated graphically, I think, if they had the same thing now.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't hit right now, but at the time, I remember thinking, "Whoa, that looks cool." I tell you what, last time I went, I bought a green, well, depends who you speak to. I think it's green, my wife says it's grey, camera bag. You were there. What do you think? Or are you not getting involved?
I can't remember.
No, I'm trying to remember the name of it now, the brand of it. I will put it in the show notes, I'll send you it in a bit. But it has been one of the best camera bags I've ever had, and I have some really nice stuff. I mean, I've got a billion bags and all that, and it's just done really well, and it's really annoying me, I can't remember what it's called, or that it's not instantly to hand.
I remember that year because I was hunting for a camera bag and I never bought one.
Yeah, and I bought
You ended up getting a tripod as well, I think. I think that's where you got your three-legged thing.
it was, yeah, when they
Or
first sort of
maybe not
like
buying it there, but, first seeing
yeah.
them and then getting one later on perhaps.
Yeah, I got that
Mm.
T-shirt as well, still got that T-shirt, the three-legged thing T-shirt with the punk logo on it.
Oh, blimey, I forgot about the T-shirts. And that's where we first saw rotor lights. So when these rotor lights were
Mhm.
just these little, very underpowered circular LED panels.
Yeah.
And I think we saw them at the wrong time because it was
Yeah.
towards the end of the day, we were both knackered and it
Mm.
didn't really hit home. And it's now the only lighting I ever use, really.
Yeah.
And they've obviously improved a lot since then. But yeah, so anyway, there's going to be loads of stuff going on. The tickets are free if you are in the photographic industry in any way. You just need to hit certain criteria and all that info's on their website. But there is a discount for tickets otherwise of 20% if you use the code SPK26. So speak missing all the vowels 26, and that will get you 20% off your show tickets as well.
And we promise we're not getting a kickback from that, so that's
No, we're
purely
not.
just
No.
for you guys.
Yeah.
We're not sponsored.
No. So that is a little thing that they're doing with anyone who's speaking. They are being given that same code and just sharing it out there, really. So yeah, if you want to go to the show, 20% off. SPK26, do yourself a favor. Yes. So anyway, that's enough advertising for other people, I suppose.
Yeah, we've done our
Do you
bit.
want to take over? You
Yeah.
take over now.
I'll take over for a bit. You've done a lot of talking. I mean, I've been happily sat here 'cause, I've got a kitten asleep on my lap, so I'm quite happy to just sit and listen. But, yeah, so we've been talking about things as per usual on our drive to work, and, those of you who listened to last fortnight's episode, will know that we were talking about keeping photography projects local, things you can actually do, not trying to change the world, just working in a way that you can work consistently, go back and make good quality work. Um, it's about reducing the stress on yourself and also accepting the realities of being I hate the word content creator, sorry. Content creator vomits in own mouth. Being a photographer or documentary photographer and being able to go back and do things while still maintaining all those boring adult things that you have to do, like going food shopping. Anyway, we got chatting during the week and it cast our minds back to something we did at university, which was the grid project. Now, the grid project is something that started, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, with David Hearn with Newport, was it, Tom?
No, it goes back a little bit earlier. I mean, David Hearn
Is
was
it earlier
part
than
of it, but it was a Valleys project originally. So
that?
this
You have it.
was early 80s.
You mean before we were born? Did anything good happen then?
So yeah, so this was I know it was at least shown at the photo gallery in Cardiff.
Mm,
Um and they own the archive. I don't know if they orchestrated it or not.
right, yeah.
But you had David Hearn was in there, Paul Rees, I think, was in there, Paul Seawright was in there.
Yeah.
bizarrely David Bailey, and I loved the stuff that he did. He was looking
Yeah,
at billboard signs,
yeah.
and he was photographing them in black and white, and it was really stark, and it kind of made me think of before George Orwell.
Mm.
I don't know why. I think it's just the way he was using these bold blocks of text. It was very
I mean,
abrupt.
I think lots of people forget that Bailey did documentary because he so often thought I was a fashion photographer, which he was. But he went later on in his career, did some beautiful documentary work. I think that's often forgotten. But yeah, so it's had some of the big names get involved there. But anyway, so this started off as a big the Valleys project, which then led into the Newport survey, if I'm correct. I mean, again,
Yep.
you're the authority on this because I'm a little bit behind on my reading. Um, and that then became the Grid project. Now, the Grid project in our second year, second of our
Yeah,
first
it
year,
was the
second
first
year,
project of the second year.
first project of the second year, brings dread or brought dread to our cohort, if I remember rightly. And what happened was you went to this lecture. We all knew what was coming. We got the brief. This is the Grid project, and I believe it was Pete Davies at the front with
Yeah,
a
I remember Pete standing there with his hat.
exactly. I was going to say with a hat, and in the hat were grid references for Newport and surrounding areas. And it was no ifs, no buts. Whatever you pulled out of that hat, that's where you were making a project. And you had to go there with your camera, and you had, I think we had 8 weeks. It wasn't super long, I don't think, to find and complete a project. There were no real limitations except it had to be within that grid reference. And I remember being absolutely terrified that there was going to be nothing in my grid. And we were quite lucky, really, weren't we? Because our grids
Yeah,
overlapped.
by pure chance, we both pulled the same area.
This is it. We ended up in a place called Dufferin, which was, to be honest with you, I think we lucked out because not only did we both end up being able to share transportation because it required 2 buses, if I remember rightly.
Yeah,
Bus
two
from
buses, and it was a dodgy area.
it
It
was
was
rough.
this rough housing estate with sofas in drainage ditches, and
Yeah,
it was like the cliche of a rough, forgotten council
yeah.
estate filled with people who had basically been abandoned by society.
Well,
Now
they'd
it
been
wasn't. When
moved
you
there
actually
a
got
lot.
behind that, it wasn't. There was some great people there, but that was the persona this place had. I remember we spoke to a couple of police officers who were doing the rounds,
Mm,
and we asked them about the area. They were just walking down the street.
yeah,
And the area of Newport called Pilgwenny, which is the docks,
mm,
and that was always known as being a rough area. And the way these cops referred to Dufferin was it is where they shoved all the bad people from Pilgwenny into.
yeah, they moved them.
So
It
we
was like a
hear this and we go,
clearance.
God, what we got ourselves in for?
Yeah,
And it was dead. There was like a Safeway or something on the edge.
yeah. There was a school, if I remember right, there was a school there was a stately home for some reason just on the edge of it, a Trinegar
Yeah,
house.
Treleague House. Yeah.
Yeah,
We should be in Doctor Who.
it has, and the school was in Doctor Who as well, fun fact. But of course, we couldn't photograph in the school, that was never gonna happen. There was some allotments we looked at, but no one wanted to talk to us. There was a fire station? Was there a fire station? Yeah, there was.
Maybe. I can't remember.
Yeah, again, no one ever seemed to be there, so we knocked on I remember the first time we went down there, when we left, we were absolutely like, "There is nothing for us to do here. This is gonna be really hard." But we actually managed to get in with a charity that was running a food bank, which was much more of a niche thing back in '7. It wasn't that you saw them everywhere, was it? They were quite a bit rarer. Uh, take what you will from that about society. And an old people's home, and I ended up photographing uh, these people who were in sort of sheltered accommodation, old people's home, and they were some of the most interesting people in the world. They were all, or a lot of them were Windrush or similar generation who'd ended up in this estate because it had the council care home on it. But they were very interesting people, and we actually managed to make a project out of it. What about your project? What did you end up doing in Dufferin? I was trying to cast my mind back to that today.
I wasn't as lucky getting it in as you were. You managed to get in with Father Christmas and his soup.
I did. He made the best soup, that guy. I was so well fed.
I ended up doing a sort of a compare and contrast
Mhm.
between this beautiful stately home and this nice big lake, um, which apparently people used to climb the fence at night to go fishing for carp in the lake and then eating the carp. I never saw that myself, but that's what I was told. And I was comparing, these beautiful autumn landscapes of this stately home and its grounds to the fly tipping and rundown estate, and they were just divided by a rusty fence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the rusty fence that ran between the two, and I just looked at that difference, and I put together as a little book. So this is before Blur Books was thing. I did it with an Apple book, and the quality was terrible.
God, I've still got an Apple book and
And
it
yeah,
was awful.
yeah, and I was just that whole project. I love the idea of it,
Yeah.
but I can't stand looking at what I turned in for the
Yeah.
assignment. I was convinced I was going to fail because I was just not, I had no sense of pride in what I managed to put together as a project,
Mm.
really. But anyway, we kind of digressed a little bit. So that
Yeah,
was the grid, and
we
that was
going to
named
chat,
by
yeah.
Paul C. Wright.
Yeah. So, yeah, Paul Wright created that.
Yeah. And then when the university moved from Newport to University of South Wales in Cardiff, during that transition, the course was under the leadership of Paul Rees, who was one of our tutors
Yeah.
at the time. He started that year, I think.
Mm.
And he took that same kind of mindset of working uh, with groups and within a confines of an area, and he called it communities. And that ran until 2019, 2020, thereabouts, I guess. 'Cause that's when he
Yeah,
took
I
a
would,
step back.
yeah.
And David Barnes took over being the course leader. And they now do something called Station to Station, which, although it's not linked in any way to the Great Newport Survey or the grid, it still has that geographical element, which is you're on one of these two railways that goes through the valleys, and you have to
Yeah.
find your project on there, and you've only got 2 or 3 days to actually do it. So you got a bit of time for research, then you put it together, you go there, and in the space of 2 or 3 days, the entire cohort are out on the trains finding these communities and photographing them. It's such a cool concept.
I love that. Yeah.
And I really love how that idea has evolved. And what I suppose we're trying to get to
Mm.
is that idea of thinking small, thinking local, and what is there on your doorstep that you can photograph, and to give yourself the restriction and the constraint of a place or grid reference and going there and finding your project within it.
Yeah.
And I tried this with some students. I know it says on our notes the donut. I've not
The
told you what the
donut.
donut is.
I did wonder what the donut was, but I knew I'd be enlightened sooner or later.
Well, I thought I'd keep you in suspense. The donut was something that I tried with some of my students a few years ago. And it's taking that idea of the grid and so on. But I know that where I am is quite a rural area. Transport links aren't always the best, and a lot of my students don't drive. So they're limited by being what's very close to home. But I also wanted to make sure they're not just photographing the view from their living room window all the time and
Yeah.
actually get out. So I sent
Yeah.
them a project called the Donut, and they have to go at least 5 miles of their front door, but
Mhm.
no more than 10 miles. So it's the
Creating a
other side of
donut.
their village, perhaps. So there's the donut. So they can't go in that center bit where they live. They have to travel at
Mhm.
least 5 miles. So, a 10-minute walk, say, but it's within that travelable distance, and they have to find something there to photograph. So that was my own little take on it, which it
Yeah.
worked quite well. And we still suggest it to students, but
Mm.
it's not a part of their criteria anymore. But we suggest it if they're struggling on ideas of what to do. Okay, what is there within that donut? What
Yeah,
can they
what can you
find?
say? I mean, I think what we're trying to get at with this what it proves is there is a project wherever you are. You've just got to look for it. Because in second year of our degree, what was that? I mean, I know we started with 80 of us. And I think by the second year, we were probably down to about 70 something. I know by the end, we were down to about 30 because that was a big dropout rate. But we all managed to hand something in. We all managed to find something in that grid reference. And I think that just proves a point that, like, you can always find something. Even if you go somewhere and you think there is absolutely nothing happening here, work can be made. There's always something to photograph. And again, like we talked about last episode, that, you know, you can, as long as you can go back and that you can work in a space that's local enough that you're not disadvantaging yourself by going, I can't go there because it's going to cost too much money to go back, or I haven't the time to go back. You can always repeat and go back, and you will find somebody or something of interest to you to photograph. I mean, how often have you wandered into a project simply by having a conversation with someone and them going, oh, such and such a thing happened to me the other day, or I know such and such person. And then from there, your project develops. It's basically go out, meet people, ask questions with a camera, and you'll find work. You'll find projects, I think, which is kind of where this episode started in our little ramble in the car the other day.
I remember one time when we were in that project,
Mm,
and we've been down there like 3 or 4 times, getting these buses, just walking around the estate, trying to find something or someone that we could do a project
mm,
with, and not feeling safe because it was such a rough area. It felt
yeah,
rough. And there's one time that we saw this guy walking towards us down the street, and he was just walking down the road.
yeah,
But I think our anxiety was so high that we
yeah,
felt threatened by this guy who was meters away.
yeah.
And I
I remember
remember
that.
we just got on the first bus that came past, get out of there. And we went back to the university and went to Pete Davis. He's a brilliant photographer and darkroom printer. Very glad I managed to stay in touch with him all these years. And we begged him if we could choose a new place, go somewhere different. And he's like, no, go back. Hey, Pete.
Yeah,
And it was such the right thing for him to do. I
yeah.
don't think you get away with saying that now to a student. No, I don't feel
No,
safe
that
there.
you'd
Tough,
have
go
to.
back. That
Yeah,
you couldn't do that. But I'm
no.
so
I mean,
glad he did
I'm glad
because
he did.
our confidence grew.
Yeah, and let's be honest, you know, we were what, 18, 19, um,
Yeah, thereabouts.
thereabouts. We needed to get a bit more of a grip in the real world. Neither of us were coming from a complete lack of understanding, but when you're that young, sometimes you don't realise you misinterpret things, or you put danger in a place that isn't dangerous. I mean, I remember talking of Pete and his unusual teaching tactics. One of the earliest, you know what I'm going to talk about now. One of the
I
earliest
know
things
exactly where you're going with this. Yeah,
I remember. I think it might have even been his first lecture. In fact, it was his first lecture we had. And he basically said there's no excuse for being late. A double amputation doesn't even count. Was it? And then he said something about if you've lost all your limbs, maybe you can be a little bit late. But it was basically because his concept was we start at this time, and at this time the door is shut, and once the door is shut, don't come in. And I don't
yeah.
think you get away with saying things like that now, but I honestly don't think anyone was ever late, bar one person. I won't name names, but I remember you'll know who I mean. Rocked up with a bottle of wine in one hand one morning and sat at the front about 10 minutes late. Other than
Yeah.
that, I don't think anyone ever rocked up late. And I think they only rocked up late because they'd had half that bottle of wine before they came in.
Pete's approach to teaching was brilliant, and I remember that day, and everyone was basically terrified because he's a big bloke.
Yeah.
And he's got that deep Welsh Valleys accent,
Hmm.
and it's like a deep sort of booming voice.
It is booming. Booming's the word.
And yeah, and he's got this really dry sense of humor. And when you first meet him and he's saying, I don't care if you lose your legs. We had a student here a few years ago who had no legs. He was one of our best photographers.
Yeah.
I said, oh, okay, Pete. And I remember grinning because I got his sense of humor. I could see through that, but I was never dare be late to him.
No. You know, a little bit of fear. I think when I look back at the degree, I think there was a real sense of wanting to impress and wanting to earn the respect of the tutors.
Yes.
I wanted them to like my work. I really wanted to make them proud. Not to the extent of some people who were a bit brown nosy, shall we say. But I wanted them to like the work. I wasn't willing to kiss backside because that's just not who I am. But I really did want to do well, and I wanted to make good work because I wanted them to like it, and I felt their opinion really mattered. And I still think that, that's what you should have. They were our mentors, they were our guides in this world. And I think if you've got a good photography tutor, teacher, guru, whatever you want to call them, that's what you should feel. You should feel like you want to impress them, that you want them to like what you're doing. Because realistically, if they're there and in that role, it's because they're good at what they do. So if they like it, you're probably on the right path. So yeah, tangent there, sorry. But we never did promise to stay on task. In fact, I think if you read the notes on our podcast, it clearly points out that we don't stay on task. We're not in focus.
I think that was actually a really good point, though. I think it wasn't that we wanted to make work just for them to like it. We wanted them to see the value in our ideas and our ambition.
Yes.
And because they pushed us hard, and they did.
God, yeah. Well, there's a reason the dropout rate was so high.
Yeah.
I mean,
If you weren't good enough, they made sure you knew that. No, I
yeah,
mean, I'm not saying they weren't supportive. They were incredibly supportive.
but they didn't mess around.
But they didn't mince their words. If they thought your work wasn't up to scratch, they told you in no uncertain terms. And I remember with one project, I experimented with a different way of presenting the work at the end, so a different paper stock, and I wasn't happy with how the prints looked. And I remember getting the feedback, and I was so depressed.
Yeah.
But I didn't disagree with the feedback in any way. I totally agreed with it, but I wanted them to see past
Mm,
that to what I wanted to achieve, and I hadn't achieved.
yeah.
I think some wine was consumed after that as well, not before.
Quite possible. I mean, let's be honest, back in those days, it was probably whiskey or yeah, well, beer probably of some description. Ale. Well, I actually know the drink of choice, cheap rosé in the wonky
Cheap
bottles.
rose was, yeah, that was nasty stuff.
That was,
Anyway, we are definitely digressing now.
yeah, what was that called?
I don't
JP
know. I just
something.
remember buying it I just remember buying it in the corner shop. It was
It was,
nasty stuff.
yeah, it was the cheapest wine in the corner shop and it was vile. But probably fueled some of our greatest photographic discussions.
Quite
While
possibly.
we thought they were great, we probably were just blind drunk. So everything seemed very philosophical at the time. Back on task though,
But
I
okay,
remember,
back on task.
yes,
Have you, since doing the Newport course, have you at any point gone back to the idea of the grid, either yourself or through teaching?
I've pontificated around using it in teaching. I've used it with specific students who have needed a bit of focus. But I've usually picked the location and said, you need to go here and there's some, make a project around something here, having pre-planned it. But no, I've not gone down the road of doing it like that. I do kind of, and through our discussions recently, feel like doing it myself. So I think I like the idea of the donut. I think I might, what's the nice word for steel? Oh, I know, acquire. Anyone who's been watching the news will know that I'm taking a dig there at somebody. I think I'm going to acquire that idea for national security. I might have a go at the donut. I think that could be an interesting way of working because 5 miles from me is the city centre of Lincoln. So it might be time to dust off the old survey map and see what's in a 5-mile radius from my front door. So yeah,
So
I
there
haven't done that.
is a website that will do this for you. So I'll try and find it, because I've got it somewhere, and I'll put that in the comments as well for anyone who wants to try doing a donut. But you
Yeah.
can map out radiuses from a set location, so where you are,
Yeah.
and you can have multiple ones all in the same thing. So you can see what's the 5-mile radius and then what's the 10-mile. So you can see what the area that you are allowed to work within.
No, okay. I mean, I feel like a project like that, it hones your skills, especially if you're feeling a bit rusty or a bit. I think confidence, it's a big confidence builder. If you can go somewhere and force yourself to talk to people and force yourself to make something out of whatever you find, you become more confident as a photographer. I mean, not that long ago, I went out with the Trashika and a flash gun and forced myself in something I've not done in a very long time. I did some street photography, but I forced myself to speak to people, forced myself to ask permission, forced myself to engage with strangers in a way that I haven't done for a very long time. And it was quite nice. And it did build back some of the confidence that I've lost over the years. Because every photographer will have an instance where their confidence is knocked. You start off with cojones the size of melons, and you'll stick your camera in anybody's face because you don't care. And then you'll have an incident, and I to this day still remember my incident where I was photographing with permission, and there was someone else taking pictures, and the other person was an adult, and I was an adult too. I was 18, but a younger adult, and this guy got up in my face, got aggressive. I wasn't photographing him, but I'd photographed something he didn't want me to photograph. I think because he wanted to have the only image of it. And in the end, he actually upset me so much that I opened the back of the camera and exposed the film just to make him go away. For years, in fact, many years later, still now, that always runs through my mind when I start to take photos in certain situations. And you will come across that as a photographer. It's how you deal with it in the long run. But for a long time after that, I
If
was
that
very
happened
nervous.
to you now, what would you still react the same way, do you think?
I mean, I don't think I'd do that now. Um, I was young. I was quite. I thought I was the big man, but actually was very much a kid, and I felt threatened, and I felt like the individual, the adult who should have known better, made me feel like I was in the wrong, and I felt very threatened. These days, if somebody tried that, I think I'd just tell them to get on their bike politely at first. I think that you can always try and talk someone round and explain what you're doing. I'm making this work. This is why I'm doing it. You're welcome to have a copy of the print. You can see the images. If I'm shooting digitally, there they are. Have a look. If they're on film, here's my website. Here's who I am. This is what I'm doing. Ultimately, though, I've become far too grumpy and old and bolshy to take that rubbish, and will most often just tell them to get on their bike and walk away. But it took me a long time to get that confidence back, a very long time. I'm
Yeah.
not a particularly confrontational individual, which a lot of people who know me would probably find hilarious, but I'm not. I'm not a confrontational individual, and I will try and avoid it. But I wouldn't ruin a roll of film these days to keep some grumpy old git off my back. I'd tell him where to get off. What about you? Did you have a moment like that in your photographic career?
I've had a few. I had one actually quite recently. It was
Was
over
it?
the summer.
Oh, yeah, I
And
remember you talking about
I
this.
was down I was down in the West Country, and I was testing out a roll of Lomo turquoise. So this is a film that flips blue and orange around. So
Mm,
you get orange skies and so on, and skin tones go sort of maybe a bit of a cyan kind of color.
yeah.
So
Everyone's a Smurf.
it's quite a trippy. Yeah, it's a bit trippy. It's a little bit. I feel I should be listening to mid 1960s Beatles or Hendrix
Yeah.
recordings. To be honest, when I'm using it, it's a bit out there.
It's an
It's
acid
very
tripping
rubber
film.
soul.
Yeah.
It's fun. And I was down in a place called Watchet, which is a little harbour town on the North Somerset coast.
Mm,
And I was using a Holga panoramic camera. I used to hate Holgas. I used to sneer at Holgas, but I confess I have a bit of a guilty love for my panoramic Holga. It's a bit fun. And I had one frame left on the film. My dad was sitting there as well. I
mm,
thought, okay, let's do a portrait. So I did a portrait of my dad. And this guy who I'd seen a little bit earlier, and I thought, oh, he'd be quite fun to photograph. He has a couple of kids' fishing nets sticking out of his backpack.
mm,
And he was like, walking a bit hard with, his Oakley sunglasses and all that. And these
yeah,
pink fishing nets sticking out of his bag. I thought that's quite fun. But there's something about his demeanor. Like, I'm not going to ask him.
yeah,
I'm not going to get involved with him. I'm
mm,
glad because I did this portrait of my dad, and suddenly this guy appears out of nowhere. I thought he'd long gone.
yeah,
Accused me of photographing his kids. I said, "What?" And I was photographing my dad, and he wouldn't believe me. Started calling me
mm,
names. I was being really
yeah,
polite with him.
mm,
He asked to see the photos. It's on film. I showed the back of the camera. There's nothing here.
yeah,
I was about to say, look, if you give me the details, I'll send you a copy of all the photos. There's 8 photos on the roll of film, all this kind of stuff. But he just kept on shouting names at me and stormed off.
mm,
Basically, he couldn't be proved right, so therefore he would shout louder, was his kind of his mindset.
yeah,
And when I got the film processed, I wanted to see, like, did I inadvertently photograph his children anywhere in that
mm,
frame? And I
yeah,
spotted him because of the fishing nets. As a tiny little dot in the background, and this guy was so far away down the path,
Yeah.
and he'd seen the camera, he wanted to make trouble,
Mm.
and he looked for an opportunity, and that's all it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, it did shake me up a bit. I was there on a holiday with my family. My parents were there. My brother's family were in the area. My sister's family were in the area, and it shook me a bit.
Mm.
And I was sulky about it because of the way I'd been perceived. I knew I'd done nothing wrong. I had no sense of guilt in
Mm.
what I'd done,
Yeah.
but to be perceived in such a negative way for something that's essentially out of your control, you can't control how
Yeah.
people see you and think of you,
Mm.
was upsetting. And, I was like, I'll just shake it off, whatever. But it does sort of niggle at the back of your brain, and it comes up every now and again that
Mm.
that guy wasn't very nice. And, and those occurrences, like that one you say when you're like 18, 19, for you, you're talking about it now.
Yeah. Well, because what he I
I
mean,
hate to break it to you, mate, but we're not 18, 19 anymore, and you're still thinking
no.
about it.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, what you were called and what I was called were very similar, and that sticks. That makes you feel that somebody has perceived you in that way is really unpleasant. And it's something I think that happens to a lot of photographers. I think there's this idea that if you've got a camera, you're potentially a stranger danger, if we're honest. In fact, a less serious and quite funny incident of this happening was at work. Now, I've worked at this particular school for a very long time, 14 or so years now. And it's in a little town, market town, very nice, very posh. Anyway, as the photography and media teacher, I'm quite often asked or tasked with making little videos or taking photographs for the school. And this particular day, I'd been asked to take a picture of the front of the building. So I was out the front of the school on the main road and then in and out getting shots. And this person walked past me going up the main drive to go to the school reception. And I thought nothing of it, waited till they were out of the way, kept taking photos, finished what the photographs I was taking and went back into the school. At which point the receptionists were laughing their heads off. And I mean, tears rolling down their faces in absolute delight. The person who'd walked past me on the drive had gone into the school and said, "Are you aware there's a very weird man outside taking pictures of the school? I'm concerned he might be a problem." To which they responded, "Yes, we know who he is. He's our photography teacher." Yeah. So again, it was simply because I had a camera. I also had, I will point out, a lanyard around my neck which identified me as a member of staff. I don't always wear a suit, but I was relatively smart. I will admit at this particular time, it was pre removing all my hair, and I did have a pink plaited ponytail, but it was very neat and tidy. But it was this perception of me because I had a camera. I'll admit I was actually quite angry. I laughed about it, but I was also quite annoyed that this person had felt the need to report there was someone with a camera, to the point where they were a bigger safeguarding risk by coming on site to report me than I was as a teacher on the site with a camera. But I'm always aware of it. I'm always aware that as a person with a camera, you have to think, is somebody going to take offense of what I'm doing? Is somebody going to misinterpret what I'm photographing? I think but it sticks with you. Everyone will have a story like those we've just told in their photography career. And if you haven't had one, it's round the corner. It will happen. Somebody will take exception to you being there with a camera, which is rather sad, really, because you're just
Unfortunately, yeah.
doing your hobby. It's sad that the world thinks like that. And it's sad that the people have to think like that in some respects. But I do remember, and I'm going to bring this background to one of our mentors, Mr. Pete Davis, said to us, be obvious when you're taking photographs. And I do try and live by this. He used to go and take pictures with a great big Welsh flag over his head and a 10 by 8 camera. I try to be as obvious as I possibly can when I'm taking pictures because I'm not trying to sneak a photo of somebody or sneak a photo of something. I don't want to interfere. I'd like to get the picture of you. If I'm back with my camera and I'm taking a picture, I don't want you to smile and grin at me. But at the same time, I don't want you to think that I'm trying to sneaky take a photo. So I'll always be very open and honest. And I've always got I've got a big camera hung around my neck. It's not a stealthy little thing. And I think that tends to diffuse quite a lot of the stress. If people can see where the camera is and you're not trying to be stealthy, you tend to have less hassle. But yeah, I always remember him with his big
Are
Welsh
you
flag.
saying that your sense of fashion comes from Pete Davis?
Do you know what? Let's blame Pete. Yeah. No. My sense of fashion has my mum's ex-husband all over it. That's clearly his influence on my early.
I mean, you say about Pete doing that. Another great example is someone else who was from our course, but a few years before us was Simon Norfolk.
Yep.
And I read an interview with him years back where he was saying about how he was working in Afghanistan, photographing a war zone with a innate wooden camera.
Yeah.
And he wears Hawaiian shirts.
I
He
remember
wants
that,
to make
yes.
himself as obvious on the land in that landscape as possible and make it very clear that he is not threatening to anyone. By being there and then wearing essentially combats and a blue bulletproof vest that says press on it, as most photographers do, you look military still, but you're an easier target because you're wearing something blue rather than green. But you look
Yes.
relatively military because you're wearing combat fatigues and so on.
Yeah, flak jacket and the like.
I mean, yeah, it works for him. I mean, he's never managed to get himself shot up in a conflict scenario, and he's come out with some incredible photographs using 10-8 or large digital cameras. I've kind of gone about it a different way, though, and
Mm.
now this wouldn't work for street photographers. And let's face it, the times where we've had negative comments made towards us or about us
Yeah.
have been essentially street photography. You working at the school, photographing school, you're on the street.
Yeah.
That guy towards me down in the West Country was, a moment of street photography. I just happened to do a portrait of my dad. Those are times where people are going to be less aware of what you're doing. But if we come back to what we're talking about, the idea of the grid,
Mm.
we were tasked to go to a place and find a project, something to document there, something worthy of our attention in that space. Now, normally when you are creating a project, you come up with an idea, you then try and
Mhm.
find somewhere where that idea exists, and then you
Yeah.
go there and you try and gain access. The grid, you have to do that the other way around, which makes it so interesting. But
Yeah.
either way, if you're making a documentary about something or someone or some people,
Yeah.
you need to have a rapport with them. You need to be able to have gained their trust. And I think it's really important that when you start photographing a project, the camera is away.
Yeah.
And I did a collaborative project with someone I work with, Paul Smith, not the
Mm.
Paul Smith, another Paul Smith, Paul Sebastian
A
Smith,
A Paul Smith.
a Paul Smith, in an eco village years ago.
I remember this. Yeah, I
And
saw it.
yeah, and Paul's approach generally is not about the people, but it's about the space. And he was asking people to move so he could photograph things. And I was essentially doing the opposite. I remember this one time he was trying to photograph the fireplace where everyone was sitting.
Mm.
And my camera is in my bag. I'm sitting on a log with a very bad cup of tea. And I'm talking
It
to
must have been
people,
bad if you're still
and
talking about
he's
it.
I don't know. It was a terrible cup of tea, but I mean, it was made on a open fire, and the tea bags had been stolen out of a skip a few days before. So yeah, it was no, yeah. Well, I wasn't expecting it to be a high tea at the Ritz kind of scenario. But Paul was very surprised to see that my approach to working in there and photographing them was not to even have a camera out. My camera bag was closed because I was getting them to know me and I was learning about them.
Yeah.
And then after about an hour or so, I then opened my bag, got my camera out, and I started making some portraits while we were sitting there. And they were fine with that. There was no hostility towards the camera because I'd gained their respect. And that's really, really important, I think, with anyone making a documentary piece of work. And this is
Yeah.
true of street photography as well. Respect is key. Be
Yeah.
respectful to people and they will be respectful to you, mostly.
9 times out of 10, yeah. I think you're right there. The vast majority of the time, if you show respect, you'll get respect back. There are the occasional moment where that doesn't, but it is mostly the other way. If you try and be sneaky, people do tend to respond badly to it though, which I think is fair. We don't all most of us don't want a camera shoved in our face. Cool, nice one.
So, right. I think we sort of rambled around this a little bit. So I'm now going to ask a question of anyone who is still listening and has some form of sanity at this moment in time.
The two don't go together. Still listening and sane is probably not
Yeah.
a. Hopefully, you're still there, guys.
So we've spoken about different ways of doing this. We've spoken about the idea of going to a place and finding something. We've spoken about the idea of the donut concepts of going away from your front door, but not too far.
Yeah.
You can choose one of these. Where would you go? What would you do? And maybe actually go and do it. Maybe, you know, if you're looking for a new project, new something to do over this year, over the next couple of months, go out your door, go do a donut, go do a grid,
And
do something, make
hashtag us.
photographs. Yeah, and let us know. So you either let us know in the comments. So we see comments on Spotify and YouTube,
Yeah.
or let us know through our social media. So Instagram for both of us, Blue Sky for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Photo
and
app.
yeah. And yeah, use the hashtag Almost in Focus podcast so we can find it as well. Tell us what your grid project is. We'd love to see what you do, be it digital or film or video, iPhone, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to see what you do based on these ideas and wherever that is for you as well.
Yeah. Please, especially our international listeners, you know, we want to see your world. So get out there with your cameras. There's no excuse. We've just
Show
removed
us,
excuses
please.
for you. Hmm? We've
Okay,
we're setting homework now. Sorry,
so
guys,
we're setting homework here with a couple of teachers.
and I can't help it.
Right.
It's in
So
the blood.
okay, so there you are. You have your homework. You have your task to do. So just a little reminder, the photography show's coming up. If you want to get 20% off your tickets, we'll put the code for that in the show notes as well. I'm also restarting my darkroom live stream. So this will be the last Thursday of the month. So that is going to be, let me just double check the calendar. That is going to be Thursday, the 29th of January. So that's just around the corner from when we're releasing this, I hope.
Yep. Go. Taking social media by
Yeah.
storm.
So there's only, I know. So that's going to be on YouTube. So just search for me, Tom Warland. You'll find my YouTube and it'll be on there. So if you want to see darkroom printing, you want to see my approach to printing, I've got a few things I want to do. It's very casual. If you've got any questions, just put them in the chat on YouTube and I'll answer them as I go along.
There's
And
usually some
yeah, I'm looking
irritating
forward
guy
to
in the
getting
chat
that
as well.
restarted.
Yeah, there's usually someone is helping out slash interrupting. I don't know who that would be.
Well, that's not a nice way to talk about Ben.
Well, I know. I just get really mad when he does it. It's my job, but yeah, it's the best way to get us live if you want to talk to us directly rather than messaging or is to sneak into one of those chats and annoy us. So yeah, I
Okay.
think people
So,
should
yeah.
definitely have a watch of that.
So yeah, so that's next week from when we release. There we go. Right. I'm rambling too much now.
We're rambling.
Go
Yep.
make photographs.
Enjoy the podcast, like, share, tell everyone else about it.
Yeah.
It's to like the like and
please
subscribe
don't forget
at the end.
to like and subscribe to the podcast. There we go. Right.
Yeah, there we go. Have a
And
nice time, guys. We'll see you in
next
2
time.
weeks. Yep.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.